Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Shortbox Podcast, Season 7.
Shortbox Nation, welcome to another week of podcasting, and for our new friends tuning in for the first time, happy to have you joining us. My name is Botter. I will be your host today. Welcome to the Shortbox Podcast, your soon-to-be new favorite comic book podcast, where we like to focus on reviews, recommendations, and interviews of industry professionals. You'll hear from my co-host, Andrew Torres, here in a few, but I wanted to formally introduce this episode because for some of you, you've already heard this one, especially if you're a patron of the show. That's right, this episode was originally a Patreon exclusive back in October. It marks the debut of our new podcast series called Pilot's License, a Patreon exclusive spin-off devoted to comic book cartoons and animated series. The whole premise revolves around us reviewing a pilot episode of a comic-themed animated show and pairing it with a corresponding comic book. The episode you'll hear today is based on the short-lived 1999 Fox Kids cartoon Spider-Man Unlimited and its corresponding 5-issue limited series from Marvel Comics around the same time. The comic and cartoon follow a pretty similar storyline. It's Spider-Man traveling to Counter-Earth to rescue a shuttle crew that's trapped there. He soon learns that the world is run by the High Evolutionary, is a tyrannical and warped version of his world, which essentially just means another normal week for the webhead. We've also covered the pilot episodes of Batman the Animated Series and The Max so far. So if you like what you hear and you're in a position to help support the show with $1 or $2 a month, you can listen to this episode as well as the other 30+ bonus episodes we have waiting for you by visiting patreon.com/theshortbox. You'll also get the ability to vote for episode topics, and you'll get access to merch and other Patreon-only stuff. Before we officially begin the show, let's give it up for our sponsor, Gotham City Limit, for bringing you this episode commercial-free. Gotham City Limit is Jacksonville's premier location for comics, toys, collectibles, and more. Check them out if you live in the area, tell them we sent you, and make it a pit stop if you ever find yourself in Jacksonville looking for an awesome comic shop. And last but not least, a big thank you, a giant thank you actually, to our Shortbox patrons. They help us pay podcast bills, and they help us create shows like the one you're about to enjoy. So, without further ado, let's get into the action. I present to you Pilot's License Episode 1, Spider-Man Unlimited.
Guess it's time for the world to get acquainted with the all-new, all-improved Spider-Man. This year's fully loaded...
What's your name? That's cool.
This definitely feels like
What?
Yeah, this definitely feels like weird techno club music.
Yo, yeah, this is like house music before house music.
This part coming up right here, I swear to God, I've heard it in Street Fighter Alpha 3.
That moan?
No, definitely not that. Definitely not this weird ass moan. Yeah, that little synthesizer thing.
Okay.
And yeah, that's definitely not it. Not sure what that was. Yo. Short box. Oh, my bad. What I drew? Yo.
Well, we're recording.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a show.
Yeah, this is.
I thought I was just hanging out with my best friend.
You thought I do this with all my
Yeah. Hey, Brian.
Do I need to introduce you at this point? I mean, most people know
It'd
that.
be nice.
That delivery, you know, I'm putting more hot sauce in your drink. I'm putting more of that triple X hot sauce in your drink. How fucked up would that be? Is if I put hot sauce in your drink?
That would be so fucked up. Oh no, you're not.
Well, you know what? We do have some new patrons joining us, and they might not be familiar with your voice because you're not on the weekly episodes as much as I'd like you to be. But
I'm a liability.
You fuck up our
You gotta
sponsorship
pay
money.
for this controversy. You have to pay for this controversy.
Let me do you justice because most patrons should know my voice by now. I'm your host, Botter Milligan. And for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of hearing Andrew Torres, my lifelong best friend, on the mics, this is Andrew Torres.
Best friend.
He normally shows up on the bonus episodes. You'll probably learn why here in a little bit. But
I'm here to fuck up Botter's day of just like when
all
Botter.
my notes and
Yeah,
well thought
hell
out
yeah.
planning.
Yeah, very much so. Botter was like, yo, I got a plant. I'm like, yo, take that plant and shove it over there. Welcome to chaos.
Yeah. Patrons, oh man, I know it's been about a month since our last bonus episode, the New Mutants movie review, for those of you keeping count. I'm sorry it took this long. We've been working a lot on the 300 and this...
Building shelves.
Yeah, building shelves and all this other stuff. But we are back, and we are back with something special, man, because I've been doing a lot of thinking on the bonus episodes and how I want them to go forward. And I want to give more of a structure to them. So I want to try something new. I know that we've piloted at least 7 different...
Yeah, we've pitched so many shows. I feel like we should just name like our show. Like, yeah, Andrew and Torres like pitch a show. That's all we ever do is like, would this be a good idea?
This episode that you're listening to is the pilot episode for a new bonus episode series that's only going to live here on Patreon, and I might occasionally drop it on the weekly on weeks. That,
Yeah, you might see
a little something for the freebies. This episode is going to be about episode 1, or it's going to be about the Spider-Man Unlimited series that was released in 1999. We just finished watching episode 1 on Disney Plus, for those of you keeping count or want to watch along. And we will also be talking about the 5-issue limited series that was released in correspondence with this series. So, like I said, going forward, we're going to watch the first episode of animated series and then try to find a corresponding comic book to talk about and do comparisons. Now, Spider-Man Unlimited, it was a very short-lived series. It premiered in October 1999. It only lasted one season. 13 episodes at that. A big reason for its cancellation was because Pokemon and Digimon, the cartoons, were so big that this kind of got lost in it. Like, it just was eclipsed by that.
There's no way you're taking that way.
No, absolutely not.
And depending on the time slot of what it was.
Definitely a really short-lived series. It was written by, I'm going to pull up the names, my apologies. It was written by Eric Stevenson and Andy Kuhn, who did the artwork. Like I said, only 5 issues. And the thing about the comic book series is that the first 2 issues were based on the first 2 or 3 episodes of the series, and then the last 3 issues of the comic book series were all original like stories, and mainly like kind of self-contained stories. So one issue a story. It's kind of like an anthology for the most part.
Yeah, which is crazy because back in the day you can tell a whole story in one comic book rather than how the writers now need like
for sure.
6-7 issues.
Well, I feel like in today's day and age, writers and comic book publishers are kind of writing like single issues for trades. You know, one story that spans 6 issues. That way we can collect it in trade. Definitely, late 90s, early 2000s, I think the idea of like you could still have a self-contained story in one issue was still prevalent. And I think it's definitely relevant in this comic book series because that's what I liked was that every issue felt like it was just a contained story, minus the first 2 issues, which was, based on the first 2 episodes. But,
yeah, and it's so funny because I read the half issue, the half
the Wizard half issue.
The Wizard half, yeah.
Which of those Wizard half issues are...
Back in the day, they seemed like they're very important, prevalent.
They definitely are not important, but they were cool. Like the Batman half issue that came out during the Hush run.
Yeah, the Batman Hush one. There was the Teen Titans one that was really
Oh, down
good.
there. No,
there was a Spider-Man Ultimate Spider-Man that came out. Like, I remember Wizard had like a really good run where like they either had half issues or 0 issues.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, for the most part, they all were kind of cash grabby because they didn't really do much to the story, but they were cool. I mean, it was like a cool idea, and the fact that they were able to team up with like Marvel and DC.
Only real fans got it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, if you're just one of these half-ass, like, I like Spider-Man, like, yo, you like Spider-Man, but do you love him enough to buy Wizard?
Yeah, to buy the Wizard. And I'm surprised those Wizard half issues aren't. It'd be cool if they were collected in like a trade or a book.
Yeah, I don't even know.
They're
what's
not that
going on.
easy. They're not expensive. You can go on like My Comic Shop or eBay and find them for relatively cheap. I mean, like, you know, $5-10 or whatever. It would be really cool if Wizard could release those as some sort of trade or something.
It's funny now. If Wizard would have held out a little bit longer, just a little bit longer, they probably would have done a little bit better.
Oh, for sure.
As far as like if they would have had like a more of an online presence and then being able to be what IGN is doing for a lot of people.
Yeah, or what's the or like how Games Radar absorbed CBR and whatever. I do agree. But back to Spider-Man Unlimited. The very general, basic premise is that
Spider-Man in space.
yeah, Spider-Man in space, or Spider-Man in a post-apocalyptic world for the most part. But the general premise is that the Peter Parker that we know ends up traveling to a counter-Earth that's on the other side of the sun. This counter-Earth is
actually like way more advanced than our Earth. Like
Yo,
they
for
got
sure.
flying cars and shit.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like it should be set in the future, but I don't think they established that.
No.
It's just a different Earth.
Yeah, this kind of Earth is actually doing better than us.
Not for the humans.
Not, not for the humans,
yeah.
but as far as like technical advances, like it's like looks like Blade Runner.
Yes, it's got a lot of cyber kind of punk elements to it.
Definitely.
You know, futuristic type vibes. But on this counter Earth, there's kind of like a caste system where there is a group of kind of anamorphic, an anamorphic population called the Bestials who are higher up on the caste system, and of course humans are on the lower rung, so they live literally on the bottom of the city. And the reason Spider-Man makes his way to counter Earth is because J. Jonah Jameson's son, James Jameson. Wait, is it James?
John,
thank you so much. All these damn J's. John Jameson going on a manned mission to counter Earth.
A man mission, which is fucking irresponsible.
On a one-man
mission.
No support crew.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, yo, hey man, listen, good luck.
We need you to play eggs. No life support. No, anything. So he ends up taking...
they trust this dude.
For real. So he ends up taking this mission to counter Earth, but he gets sabotaged by Carnage and Venom, who hop a ride on said spaceship. Spider-Man kind of fumbles the ball in stopping them and ends up getting a second ride to counter Earth to go save John Jameson, and that's when he kind of realizes, oh, this world is kind of crazy. Yeah. And he finds himself in the middle of a rebellion. John Jameson is actually leading the humans, and I guess like some bestials are, helping out too, against the High Evolutionary who has control of said counter Earth and his bestial army, or the Wundagore Royal Army. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the Four Horsemen of Wundagore.
Yeah, the Knights of Wundagore, I'm sorry.
Knights of Wundagore.
So that's pretty much the basic premise for the most part.
That's the simplest as we can put it for you.
Exactly. Drew, I wanted to start off with like trivia or fact. Like, what do you know about the show as far as like background or any like cool trivia or facts?
As a kid, it was one of those I didn't understand what was going on. It was like, yo, what's going on? Why do we have a new show? What happened to the old Spider-Man show?
Well
said. This is before the internet, and my mom didn't have the patience
to explain
like,
this
to
very
explain
convoluted.
To me, like,
she didn't even know what the fucking Spider-Man was.
Yeah, she was just like, I don't care. Like, listen, you're failing math.
You shouldn't even be watching cartoons with your dumb ass.
Did you clean your room? But I remember that. I remember that he had he had a different suit, but I had no idea about story or anything. I remember watching the first episode and just being like, you could tell that they were pulling from the animated series.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Definitely, with the sound effects and how everything was. As a kid, my dumbass probably didn't appreciate it. As an adult, I can be like, oh, okay, they're definitely trying.
For sure. I think during my research and having to prep for this episode, like always, I feel like that is one thing when it comes to like these deep dive kind of review episodes, is I end up having a sense of appreciation. And I don't know if it's because I genuinely like the content or because I know so much about the background. There's a sense of appreciation for the work that gets involved. But regardless, I think my first conscious exposure to this show or introduction to the show is pretty similar to maybe yours and a lot of people listening that, were watching Fox Kids during the prime, mid 90s, is that this show came out. I was already a big fan of like the Spider-Man animated series, the X-Men, the Batman. So any of those animated superhero cartoons, I was watching. I was watching it with like my dad and brothers. It being the House of Marvel at my house, this was definitely a show that we just watched. I wasn't reading comics at the time. I had no concepts of like continuity or alternate, versions and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, like as a kid at that age, anything that happens to Spider-Man, you think it happens as a whole.
Yeah, like you just think it's one
timeline of just like, yo, this happened, like everything fits.
Yeah. Having no idea of like continuity or anything like that. This was just kind of random and like, oh, okay, this is just a different Spider-Man. I don't think I tried to connect the dots. It was just like, okay, this is a different version of Spider-Man. I remember liking it, but it didn't have lasting impact. I always thought this was based on 2099, Spider-Man 2099. When I was trying to find the comic book based on this, I just read Spider-Man 2099.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Number one.
Yeah, I remember it because we were talking about it. Yeah,
and I hit you up. I was like, yo, Spider-Man 2099, number one is pretty good. Like, and you said that issue 1 came out when? 1992. And this came out in 1999. So I mean, like, it makes sense for me, in my mind, it makes sense why I would make that correlation. But then you were like, yo, why are you reading Spider-Man 2099? It's not based on that.
Yeah, I was like so proud of you.
I was ready to debate. I was like, no, it's definitely based on 2099. But that wasn't the case. This is its own standalone thing, and that's.
But now that we actually see how the timeline works, we can kind of say like, okay, they kind of borrow from 2099.
Oh, for sure,
just a little bit.
I think this show is influenced by Spider-Man 2099. I think it's also influenced by Batman Beyond. There's definitely like some cyberpunk elements to it too. So I mean, pick a genre and really pick any post-apocalyptic comic book, in my opinion, and. This has that vibe, like X-Men Days of Future Past keeps coming to mind.
I had mentioned to you this looks like Tradmore.
I do appreciate this art and design, the character designs a lot, because I don't think in all my years of reading Spider-Man, and hopefully by I hit stop recording and then I think like, damn it, yeah, actually I have an example, but I don't think I can recall a Spider-Man story that takes place in the future like this, like we've seen it with X-Men, Age of Apocalypse, Days of Future Past. We've seen it with like Avengers and a lot of other characters and comic book titles where they kind of jump into a post-apocalyptic world where nothing is the same. There's twisted versions of all your characters. I don't think Spider-Man has done that a lot. I don't think there is a lot of. Yeah, see, like you can't really.
Yeah,
think
I can't even think of the only thing I could think of. It's not even post-apocalyptic. Actually, the only thing I would say post-apocalyptic is when they get to when they're dealing with the Spider-Verse, and it's these guys that are basically coming to destroy them. Okay. But that's because they're fighting different versions of themselves.
Yeah. But
not the whole concept of basically going in this cyberpunk. Mm-hmm. But I can't even say I know what you're talking about when you're saying post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, and I think that's different from like kind of the cyberpunk kind of like futuristic world.
But it's different than one of those like Neo Tokyo, Blade Runner, like definitely like you said, like Age of Apocalypse type.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's why, as an adult, this stands out a little more, and I appreciate it a little more, is because I've now read a bunch of Spider-Man, and this is very unique among the lore. And even the comic book carried the same vibe. I mean, it was literally kind of the same thing, other than the last 3 issues that were different one-shot, unique stories. And I wanted to kind of take a step back and talk a little bit about the background story for this show. So this was this came out right after Spider-Man the Animated Series, which was a big hit. Marvel wanted to produce another show. They reached out to Saban, Power Rangers,
Digimon, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Richie Rich. Saban Entertainment's been around for a little bit.
They've done a lot. So Marvel reaches out to Saban and says, "Hey, we want you to produce a Spider-Man show, but." Since we have a deal with Sony to produce this upcoming Spider-Man movie, the 2002 film, you guys cannot use the original costume. What was it? You can't use the original costume. Saban had originally wanted to do a series based on like the first 26 issues of the original Spider-Man story.
Yeah, so they want to do like a low budget, like let's just do our kind of like what the Batman animated series did. Like let's kind of do that where we just we have the stories. Let's just
Yeah,
animate these.
they really just wanted to translate like the original 26 issues comic books into a show. So more about like his background, why he's in high school, Peter Parker's learning, getting his powers, Uncle Ben dies, blah blah blah.
I'm hearing all this, and I'm just getting upset because that's what Dragon Ball Z did. Basically, they're like, "Hey, Kurt Torment, we're going to adapt everything you wrote in this comic book. We're going to add a couple of things, but and look how successful that is."
Yeah. Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show. Yeah, for sure. But Marvel and Sony was like, no, we don't want you to do that.
Is it Sony or Fox?
No, Sony.
Okay.
Yeah, because Sony was in the works of producing the movie. Marvel was like, hey, no, you can't do that because we're doing this movie and it's going to cover his origin. So then Saban was like, all right, well, we've got this idea where Peter Parker finds his way on this counter Earth and he meets another Spider-Man whose Uncle Ben didn't die and he lacks the moral fortitude and he's Venom in this universe. And then Marvel's like, that doesn't sound like a good idea. Having two Spider-Mans sounds really confusing, and they're both the same person.
That thing will never work.
And then flash forward, it's into the Spider-Verse. It's wildly successful.
5 different Spider-Man running around.
Yeah, for sure. So Saban is once again back to the drawing board, and that's where this show comes out of. Where it's like, okay, well, we can't use the original costume. Let's give him a whole new one. We can't have two Spider-Mans. Well, then let's just have the high evolutionary in this futuristic world. So I got to give them kudos because I feel like sometimes with art, when you hone in, when you put up boundaries, it challenges a creator or an artist, and sometimes you do get really good work. And not all the time. Sometimes you just want art to kind of be art, but sometimes putting in boundaries or challenges, I think, makes certain creators step up to the plate with crazy unique ideas. And I think this one is it's not completely unique and one of its kind. I'm sure you can point to a bunch of different references like we've done Batman Beyond. I was
gonna say, plot holes alone. Plot holes alone. I was like, right. I was like, plot hole. But
I do give them props for taking Spider-Man into this direction. But like what you're saying, it only lasted 13 episodes because it just couldn't compete against Pokemon or Digimon. So eventually, it just it was just shelved.
There's no way. Here's the thing. If you really think about it, I'm sorry. There's no way that this show would have survived against Pokemon and Digimon.
No, I don't, and I don't know if a season 2 would have done any better. So it ends on a cliffhanger. Episode 13 ends on a cliffhanger.
Literally on a cliff,
and Spider-Man's hanging. So it ends on a cliffhanger. I did find a YouTube video where they break down because they wrote a script for season 2 to kind of wrap everything up. It just never saw the light of day. Which it's an interesting watch. If anyone ends up watching Spider-Man Unlimited and is curious about
we're definitely not going to link it to the Patreon, I guess.
So that is kind of all the trivia I've got. As far as the comic book, so episode 1 of this show premieres October 1999. The first issue of this comic book premieres December 1999. It is used really as a device to kind of push you towards the cartoon. It's literally, it says on the cover, I think, based on the Fox Kids TV show coming out or something like that. So it was really just used as a marketing tool to promote the TV series. But the first issue was a 48-page special, and I found it interesting that it was a $2.99 book, you know, which was kind of uncommon back in 1999, where a majority of the books were like $1.99, $1.50 still. This particular issue 1 was 48 pages, and in the back of the pages, they showed you some preview art. They also had interviews with the showrunners and things like that. That was a good first issue. I read that, and I was like, okay, the art was really crisp. The story was, granted, it was, pretty much a condensed version of episode 1. But reading the rest of the series, I was like, oh man, this is, I kind of wish this would have continued, the comic book series. What did you think about the comic book?
Dude, I was very much floored, and I enjoyed the comic book so much to where, like, we didn't watch the episode, right? And the one thing is, like, reading these issues was actually kind of fun. And I was just like, damn, these are actually pretty cool. And I got really excited because I'm like, I know for a fact that the first season goes 13 episodes. So I wonder how much more information I'm going to get. Like, are these issues that I'm going to read, is that the first season? Or at some point when I watch the show with you, are we going to get to a point where it's going to get me past where the show is? Because I haven't watched any of the show. All my knowledge comes from this comic book. So, and like we said, this comic book, the way that me and you have talked about this comic book and how it would probably work now.
If this got a reboot, I feel like this might.
If this showed up in the comic book first and then became a TV show, it'd probably be like different.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was a show and then they made it a comic book, it's definitely like way different.
Yeah. I think at that point you're kind of restricted because it's like, well, we can't. And I'm just kind of assuming. I'm assuming that you can't. There's certain rules you probably have to follow. Like, you can't, get too far ahead of the show, or there's characters you can't show up because the show wants to premiere them first. I'm sure that they were probably, just like how Saban was kind of handcuffed to certain rules. I'm sure the team probably couldn't do nearly as much. And the fact that it was only 5 issues tells me that, it just didn't probably, 1, it didn't sell well. And 2, I don't know if it was, even planned to go any further.
Very true. And the artwork is so done well done.
Yeah, Andy Kuhn.
Yeah.
Kuhn, sorry.
Kuhn. Mm-hmm. His stuff now would be successful because it has that very much. Who am I thinking of? Darwin Cook,
like a Bruce Timm kind
Bruce
of
Timm vibe, as well as Doc Shaner. I really wish I was able to show our listeners if you get a chance, Google just some of the images on this. I guarantee you'll really like the colors, the way that he's drawn. It's not too kiddie, but also at the same time, it's not too dramatic.
The single issues are readily available on eBay, My Comic Shop.
Yeah, it's $85 for the whole lot.
Well, that's someone trying to be greedy on eBay, but there's definitely cheaper options. I will say the artist Andy Kuhn, I'm sorry. His portfolio includes TMNT for IDW. And then he's also the co-creator of Fire Breather, which is an Image comic book series that got picked up by Cartoon Network and made into a cartoon. So I know he's doing pretty well on that. He also did Mars Attack for IDW as well. The writer on the comic book series, Eric Stevenson, he is actually the publisher for Image Comics. He also co-created and he's written comic books such as Long Hot Summer, Nowhere Men, and They're Not Like Us. 3 series I have not read at all.
Damn.
But I've heard good things about them. So it's kind of cool to see how these two guys, because I'm sure you're kind of like me where when you see cartoon adapted comic books, you kind of look at them like, these don't really count. These are kind of cheap. You might as well just watch the comic. You might as well watch the cartoon series. But it's cool to see that these two, Eric Stevenson and Andy Kuhn, ended up doing really pretty good, awesome things in their career. Can you name a comic book series based on the animated series that really kind of piqued your interest?
So I would say that I want to say Gregory Weissman did a Young Justice comic book. So when that was big on Cartoon Network, I read those were pretty good. Batman animated series.
That was going to be my example because I do know that comic book series. I've read those issues and they're really good. Like the comic book series based on the Batman animated series. Who does the art? Ty Templeton.
Ty Templeton. Yes.
Ty Templeton. Which he basically is just kind of aping Bruce Timm style, but for the purpose of the comic book, it makes sense. Moving back to, I want to swap back to episode 1. Because I think it's important to note that the voice actor for Spider-Man is a gentleman by the name of Rino Romano. He also does, and I think this was a good springboard for a lot of talent on this show. For example, him being a prime one, Rino Romano, the voice of Spider-Man in this series, also ended up going to do the voice of Spider-Man in the PlayStation video game, like that OG one that everyone loves.
Off the animated or the one that was like the actual the movie game?
Not the movie game, but the
animated
the animated one. Okay. The one where you got to that one had a bunch of different suits as well.
Yes.
That one was, I got great memories.
Definitely when you unlocked the Scarlet Spider-Man. To me, so my biggest goal was to unlock that Scarlet Spider-Man suit. So when I got it, I lost my mind. I was like, all right, cool, I'll play the game.
Yeah, that one was legit. That was that game is a classic in my mind. But he ends up doing the voice of that, which came out shortly after this series. So I think there's definitely a correlation there that, he does a Spider-Man voice for here, and then that I think this was it just makes sense.
And it's not bad Peter Parker voice.
I think the voice acting in this is solid. He really does a good Peter Parker. He also ends up going on to do the voice of Batman in the Batman animated series, not the animated series, the Bruce Timm one, and Kevin Conroy, but
the Jackie Chan adventures.
Yeah, exactly, the Batman. So he ends up doing the voice of that. He also does the voice of Darth Raven in Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. Interesting note here: the High Evolutionary, who doesn't show up in episode 1, is voiced by Richard Newman, who is also the voice of Bison in the Street Fighter animated series.
Jeez, man.
Yeah, just fun little fun facts. Now, the showrunners for this episode 1, Worlds Apart, Part 1, was written by Michael Reeves, who wrote the story. He's also known for Gargoyles. He's worked on the Batman animated series. And then I'm going to butcher this name, so get ready. And then the other showrunner for this episode is Will Mugnayat, something like that.
I don't know why you keep looking at me.
I know. I'm just looking at, yeah. But he wrote the story, and he's also known for a lot of animated series, mainly storyboard artist for the Batman animated series. He's also worked on Captain Planet and just a bunch. So I want to let's talk about episode 1. What are some things that stood out to you as far as this episode, whether they be key moments or scenes or things about the characters and their interpretation?
Well, the first thing I wrote was definitely Batman Beyond vibes, just because of music, where they're at, definitely the setting of the scene.
It's definitely a lot of techno and very I'm not gonna say grunge, but it's the only phrase that comes to mind, very futuristic, if grunge was set in the future.
Yeah, if Blade Runner was real, not Blade Runner. If Blade, remember when all the vampires are all dancing, that's what it is.
Hell, the Batman Beyond opening scene where they're all dancing. This music sounds a lot like that.
Definitely.
I thought the pacing for this episode was really good because, you just kind of dive right in. They don't even explain who Peter Parker or how he got his powers is. They let the intro music do that for you in that little cool collage.
That's a cool little respect because you're all right, you already know this is, but you don't have to waste your time. What did you think of the costume? I like those yellow eyes.
Yeah, and that's. They weren't allowed to use the OG costume, but he does have the OG costume on for at least the first 5 minutes of it. And the only difference I noticed was that the eyes were yellow rather than the usual white. And that was an interesting choice. I don't mind it. I think the Spider-Man Unlimited suit is pretty badass. And the fact that it's nanotechnology that he stole from Reed Richards.
I saw it when you wrote that down.
So you made a comment how Counter Earth looks like they're doing way better than, regular Earth. But isn't it crazy that the Ram that ends up capturing a Spider-Man, he's going to experiment on him, is I can't get his mask off. I'm going to use this very rudimentary spinning swirly blade. How far ahead are you guys? Because that's just nanotechnology. You guys don't have that yet? Y'all don't got this? Y'all ain't got the new?
Oh, y'all never seen this before?
Yeah.
Y'all got flying cars, but you never seen this?
12 minutes into the episode, we're already off into Counter Earth. So we get what the first 10 minutes are. We get to watch Spider-Man fail at stopping Venom and Carnage from hijacking the ship. We get to see him be New York's most wanted, and he's hated by even the firefighters.
The firefighters.
Even the fire. You know how far along someone's shit list that you got to be that firefighters start
hate
messing
you.
with you.
he was swinging, and then he got blasted with 2 waters.
And,
and then,
his suit was tearing apart. Like, damn, that's some high pressure water.
my favorite part is when
they held him down like the civil rights movements. Like, damn.
bro, I was like, dang, Spider-Man get no respect. But my favorite part was basically when they interviewed the firefighter afterwards. He's like,
and
yeah, and then
he lied on him.
he goes, at that point he lunged at me, but this building caved in and saved my life.
Yeah. So we get to watch Spider-Man be even more hated than he normally is. Off screen, they don't show you how he gets the costume, and I will say they do take big chunks out. Like they rely a lot on monologuing, a lot of like parts that you don't see.
Yeah, the stories in where he's like, yo, I got this suit from such and such.
Thank God I got the suit from Peter Parker, Reed Richards, and then even when he's on the ship explaining like the spaceship, or when he lands on Counter Earth and he explains the whole caste system, where he's like, okay, I get it now. The bestials are, living on top, and the humans are living on the bottom like trash. I'm like,
I mean, we're 9 years old, so we're not
yeah,
gonna
for
know
sure.
what's
I
going
mean,
on.
we definitely
Yeah,
need
this
to
is not a show for an adult.
For sure. This whole
Definitely for a
series is
kid.
not.
Like, know your audience.
Like I said, it's just very fast paced. So he steals another spaceship to go to Counter Earth to go rescue John Jameson. He lands on Counter Earth, and then he is introduced to like the world. These Knights of Wonder Girl who are like, there's a rat chick, there's a bear chick, there's a tiger guy, and then a ram guy. The 4 Knights of Wonder Girl.
Well, they hear that he's Spider-Man. They're like, oh, yo. They're like,
that was kind of cool. I ain't gonna lie.
He might be a bestial. Let's go handle this. Ooh, and they get there.
But I will say, it's definitely, all right, it's fast paced. It kind of kept my attention, because I'm like, okay, this is moving fast enough to where there's no lull moment. The only gripe I really had was that some of the times it felt like over explaining, but to your point, this is aimed towards like a bunch of 9-10-year-old boys. But this episode, and I'm sure the rest of this series is very loyal to feeling like a comic book, even from like the graphics, like the little monologue boxes.
That's what I wanted to tell you. I was like, yo, he fakes his death, and he was able to get a job working for the space program.
Well, technically, he fakes Spider-Man's death, because when he saves the old girl in the firefighter scene, building collapses on him.
He saves her cat, and then she immediately sprays him in the face.
Yeah. He fakes Spider-Man's death. He convinces J. Jonah Jameson to get him a job at the space station as they're building another spaceship to go, do a rescue mission. It is interesting from a comic book perspective that we don't see Reed Richards on screen in this episode, but he does show up in issue 3 of the comic book series. Is it issue 3? Yeah. Issue 3.
But it's not him.
No, it's not. It's like a different alternate reality version.
Maybe no, it's his Counter Earth version.
How dope was the Nick Fury cameo in this episode?
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming.
That was,
and it was super Stranko.
I thought the same thing, because the jetpack. It was something about the jetpack and his gun,
and the way that he was just drawn and stuff. And that's the thing is, like, yo, they just come up and be like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I gotta go save him." He's like, "All right, bye."
Yeah, it was like, weren't you just trying to shoot me like 2 minutes ago? And all I had to tell you was, I'm the only one that can save John Jonah.
Yo, if they did this Spider-Man series, like, this would be something that if like Hickman did this, if Hickman's name was on this, people would lose their fucking mind. They'd be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they sent Spider-Man."
Would you only want this to be rebooted as a comic series, or do you think it would work as a like an animated series?
I would like them to give me a little bit of comic books. Give me a couple comic books, and then at some point do the animated series. Only because animated series take a certain liberty that comic books have to develop quick and easy.
I'm A-okay this not coming back as an animated series, but as a comic book. Because I thoroughly enjoyed these issues. Like, the fact that I read the comic books first before watching this episode with you, I flew through those first 5, and we were only supposed to read like the first issue, but they were short enough because they, were kind of.
They actually felt really long, though.
It's like late 90s dialogue where they're still giving you a lot of dialogue, monologuing, description boxes and things like that. I think that's why.
And to basically without revealing too much, issue 3 gets really interesting. Like, they get super interesting when it comes to storyline and where this can go. But at the same time, it's like, all right, I wonder what we're gonna do. That's what I'm saying. Like, I need to watch episode 2 and 3 only because I know stuff only comic book wise. So I don't even know if that's the directions that they do. Because remember, in the comic book, Peter gets to this counter Earth. John Jameson's like, yo, we got to do an uprising.
Yeah, you can't leave just yet. And Spider-Man's
Yeah,
like,
and then they cut to him
really?
basically looking for a 9-to-5 job.
You know what?
That's what I was talking about. Like, are we talking about the comics? Because the comic books take a whole different turn, and it sets it up for a Peter Parker story already.
That is fair, and that's a good segue to issue 1. So we'll just kind of keep it issue 1. If you want to talk about some of the issues, that's fine. An interesting thing about, and this is the power of like comic books, is that they have the ability to either elongate a story or really keep it, condensed.
This comic book did better.
And I was just about to pull up. They tell you, this first episode, like I said, it took 12 minutes for Spider-Man to get into the second ship and then get to Counter Earth, like 12 minutes. The comic book does 2 splash pages or 2 pages of 4 panels, and they go through everything we learned in the beginning. He loses, he fumbles, the battle with Venom and Carnage initially. He's hated. He fakes his own death. He steals a ship and a suit. Now he's on Counter Earth. And that's in like 2-3 pages, 4 pages at the most. And now we're already introduced. And the rest of the comic book is us introducing us to Counter Earth, the Bestials.
And the artwork is so good,
dude.
It is, dude.
It is really, 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 really good. Like, it feels, it's a good nod to the animated series. It feels like there's animated influences.
Samurai Jack.
Yo, damn.
Samurai Jack.
That's the vibe that I also get from this show. Like, Samurai Jack, wrong place, wrong. That's what it is. It's Spider-Man in the wrong place, definitely wrong time.
But he's always going to stand up and try to, like, do what he's like. It's like, with great power comes great responsibility. He has to do this.
Well said, yeah. They do a good job of.
I dropped the mic.
Both the first episode and comic book do a good job of keeping that very pivotal Spider-Man like core being. That great power, great responsibility, and the fact that like he messes up, like he didn't stop Carnage and Venom, even though he tried. It was a valiant effort. It's not like he turned his back on a crook running away, but he fumbles the ball and he feels like he's tortured by that guilt. And when he gets to Counter Earth, it's like, of course, this only happens in a comic book or a movie. The guy I'm supposed to rescue doesn't want to leave because he's here trying to fight, the good fight. Now I've got to stay. Meanwhile, I've got, Mary Jane back home and I may never see her. Like, it's.
They definitely set the stakes up high.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely feels dated in the sense of like late 90s, early 2000s. Everything's kind of like blocky. Something about the coloring I can only relate to like 90s vibe or late 90s. Like, you can tell this was printed on cheap paper. Like,
yes.
Cheap paper, and the color kind of tells you that because it looks faded. Even though I'm reading it digital, it looks faded still.
I know for a fact that somewhere in this magazine, in this comic book, there's either going to be a Got Milk ad or Corn Nuts, like the Corn Nuts ad, or like something with the Three Musketeers. Like, those are the big ones.
Yeah. Or
NBA Jam. Or whatever the game was that was pretty good.
I will say reading this first issue made me really miss, because comic books around this time always had additional content in the back a lot of times, whether it be like, hey, here's what's going on in other comic books or whatnot. But for special issues like this that are, that were based on a movie or some event, there was like always an interview section, a letter column. And in this issue, they even go so far as to literally break down the first season. Like, they run down all 13 episodes. So they list every third episode and what happens. And it's like, oh, damn, you guys were like really pushing this show. And this, that's the vibe you get. There's also like pages devoted to like, hey, here's how we arrived at the cover. And you get to see like the artwork process. And that small stuff like that, I like. Like, it makes it feel like I'm getting my money's worth. And it might be just because I love reading and learning about the process. Yeah, it's fun to like learn about the process. But to your point, I was surprised how good this comic book was. I read issue 1. For some reason, I skipped 2 and 3, and I read 4 and 5 because I was mistaken. I thought issues 1, 2, and 3 were based on that were just rip-offs of direct rips of the cartoon. But it turned out that 1 and 2 were rips of the first 3 episodes. 3, 4, 5 were self-contained news stories. But I ended up reading 4 and 5, and 4 was about Spider-Man leaving the city, the perimeters, and he ends up going to a place called Harmony, which kind of looks a little bit like Asgard. You get Asgard vibes.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's like the most
yeah,
violent
and it ends
place.
up like being, you know, of course, like there's a dark secret. He ends up meeting like a girl that looks like Gwen Stacy, blah, blah, blah. Issue 5, though, was dope in the sense of you got to see this world's Wolverine. Did you read that story yet?
No, that was the one
Okay.
thing I told you because I read the half issue 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I was like, "What happens to issue 5?"
Yeah.
When Wolverine shows
So
up.
issue 5, like there's a murder going on. Like there's like a bunch of murders going on. Like all the human, like there's been a spree of murders on the humans, and they've all got like these identification chips in their neck. And apparently, like this murderer is ripping them all out.
Dude, that's sick.
And he runs into like this world Wolverine, and they end up solving the mystery. What I enjoy about the comic book, and I wish there was more issues, is just, and I think that's the appeal of like post-apocalyptic future kind of stories, is that you want to see, all right, what's the twist on this character? Like, what are they going to do with this character?
The one that I want to ask you is about J. Jonah Jameson's, who is not. It's not a J. Jonah Jameson. He's very much pushing Peter. Remember, like Peter shows up. He's like, "Yeah, I got all these pictures of the new Spider-Man," and this guy's like, "Nah, I don't want all Spider-Man. Give me something else." And then Peter, in his back of his head, he's like, "Oh, this
flowers."
no." He basically is like, "Yo, he wants something other than Spider-Man." He's like, "Oh shit, he wants me to be a real journalist." Because he keeps bringing him Spider-Man photos. He's like, "No, I don't want all this." He's like, "I want some real stories." So I thought that was kind of interesting because J. Jonah Jameson spends the entire newsfeed trying to destroy Spider-Man's like
Yeah.
entire like career and just make him a menace. And this J. Jonah Jameson's like, "Nah, like that's okay. Like we don't even need to talk about that. Like there's some other shit that's going on that I need to be looked at and looked after."
This version of Green Goblin is very interesting. Like he shows up in what issue? I think issue 2, and he's literally like a goblin look. Like he's got real wings. They've got claws. He's got like these very kind of a lot of gum, like weird teeth, like these goggles. He looks like I said, like a goblin, but he ends up befriending Spider-Man. Like he ends up becoming like his ally in the comic book and in the cartoon series. So to your point, it's cool to see like these mirror versions. And I think that's usually the appeal of like these alternate takes of characters, is that you get to see them like what's the opposite version of them and whatnot. And that's why this series was interesting to me, was that I felt like it was well written. And once you got out of those first 2 issues into the own unique stories, I think things really got to pick up, and you got to see the writer, Eric Stevenson, like kind of stretches, like, you know, really got like do his own thing. And Andy Kuhn's artwork just like, yo, it's consistently good, man. Like I cannot get over how good the artwork is. Like it gives me a lot of like Dust and Wind vibes. Just because like the characters look like miniature, there's like the animated vibe as well. The colors match the pencil work a lot. Like you can tell like there's synergy there. I really wish there was an action figure of this. I've been like, as you know, I've been heavily into collecting action figures lately, and the fact there's no merch of this line, and I'm like, yo, there had to be. It's a Fox show. Like they were producing merch all the time for all the other shows. Like there's no trade paperback. There's no action figure. There's no. All they've really got is the single issues, and I think some some merchandise around, but I can't find much on it.
It wasn't like a Happy Meal toy or anything?
Yo, like no Happy Meal. And how do you feel about the web cape?
Bro, I'm like, listen,
'Cause
I'm
normally
always going
I'm
to
a
be down
hater
for a
of,
cape.
like-
No, I love the cape. And here's the thing.
I do fuck with the
He
cape.
doesn't have a full cape. He has that Shazam half-ass cape. You know what I'm talking about? Where it just barely covers you. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I get it. Like,
Yeah.
I like it.
I like the it's a little too on the nose, the spiders on his wrist, but it is kind of cool. I ain't gonna lie. It's cool because the line work in the small details, you know, the small red line work, the little plates, they look like kind of plates on his legs, kind of stand out. And it's a good twist on the red and blue, where the blue is more dominant, the red is more of like a highlight, and the cape still gives you like, it's a unique take on Ditko. Like you can definitely tell like they took the underarm kind of web wings, the web armpits, and said, well, let's get rid of that and just give him a cape.
I'm looking at this in Spider-Man 2099. Like, you cannot help. And just
That's why I thought that this was that the cartoon was based on that.
I know.
Because the similarities are like, okay.
It's uncanny,
But
or amazing,
Ooh,
spectacular,
nice.
sensational.
That's why once you distinguish, like, okay, this is not based on 29.9, you can see it for what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't think that you can compare. There's not too many other suits for Spider-Man that match to this one. I think the closest one that resembles this might be one of my favorite ones at that. The Scarlet Spider-Man. Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider-Man. Not the hoodie, but when he ends up getting his own suit.
Oh, his new one.
Yeah, the
blue side piping.
Oh, come on, man.
Yo, yeah, and he still had his wrist guards. Like, yo, it's one of the ones. Yeah, that was such a sexy like Spider-Man outfit that I was like, I remember it constantly as a kid going, damn, like, oh shit.
What are some of your favorite alternate Spider-Mans? Like alternate versions or alternate costumes?
If I had to talk about the most like crisp, sexiest outfit ever, Spider-Man Black's outfit. Like, yo, Spider-Man's black outfit with the white Spider-Man. Like, I remember watching that as a kid. Like, I was like, holy fuck, this is sick. Symbiote Spider-Man is probably the best Spider-Man.
Some of my favorite ones include Spider-Boy.
Dude, that's my favorite.
I could have said anything.
Yeah, and that was going to be my favorite.
Yeah,
you know me so well.
Spider-Boy from the Amalgam series where they combine Spider-Man and Superboy. I always thought that was like kind of cool looking. Captain Universe Spider-Man.
That has to be that. Yo, that was a Flair Ultra card. That definitely.
I swear to God, as soon as you said Flair Ultra card, the exact image popped right, like every detail. That is such a crazy looking, because it's like, yo, this is a weird mashup to see Spider-Man have like cosmic powers in blue and white. That shit was crisp. So I've got Spider-Boy.
Like white sneakers. Like, yo, he got the white bottoms on, and you're just like, yo, please don't touch my shoes.
Captain Universe Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir. But more so,
which one, the Spider-Verse one or the one from the comic books?
The comic books.
The comic book one.
Not so much the suit as much as I like the story. I think the story is better than the design per se, but it's also like very unique. So I do put them on my list. The PS4 Spider-Man costume is fucking amazing, because who would have thought that a giant white Spider-Man logo, chest logo, would be so fucking sexy. Like just some white highlights.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie.
So clean. It's like modernized. It's like fresh. It's kind of, I don't know.
Dope ass sneakers.
Yeah. So PS4 Spider-Man, Ben Reilly Spider-Man, not the hoodie, but when he gets his own, and it's like, damn, what was like the big takeaway from that? He had like the web cartridge bracelets, and the blue was more dominant, is what I remember.
It was like a off-white outfit. Like high fashion.
It was essentially the same costume, but different.
Deconstructed.
Yeah, there were small details that made it its own, and I respect that. So I have a honorary mention one. Once again, not Spider-Man per se, among the Spider-Man family, and I feel like I make the rules. May Parker's Spider-Man costume,
Tom DeFalco's run,
which is very similar to Scarlet Spider's costume, and I think that's why I like it. But that run is also on my back burner list. Like, I want to read that series so bad because it is so like loved. Like,
I'm right there with you.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you.
And I see them comics, I see them trades all the time. All right, so but back to you. Favorite Spider-Man costumes, alternate Spider-Mans, Spider-Man versions.
Anything can go. Captain Britain's Spider-Man suit is actually pretty sick.
Yeah,
like, I really do appreciate that one.
You know why? Because I feel like the British flag with combined with Spider-Man costume, it complements it well.
Very well.
Because I mean, you've already kind of got the color, and yeah, you got the colors essentially. You got the red,
and you have that white piping.
Yeah, the red, white, yeah, exactly. And you incorporate the white kind of webbing and line work as well. So it just fits. To be honest, British Spider-Man looks a lot like PS4 Spider-Man costume.
Definitely. And now that I think
the color
about
scheme
it, because
is very
of the way he
similar.
looks at it. Yeah. I would also say Miles Morales' costume.
Yo, I wanted to put that,
but you didn't. So
yeah, right,
obviously you don't like
that's
it.
Fair, that's
As
fair.
I'm looking at this Miles Morales action figure right next to you.
I have one more to throw in.
Oh, okay, cool.
This
Last
one's a comic
minute edit.
This one's a comic book one.
Comic book.
The House of M Spider-Man.
Oh my God. Yo, let me tell you right now. Yes, definitely, most definitely. And that's one of those books where I keep wanting to like go back and reread.
Yeah. All right. I feel like we have done a pretty good job of our first pilot episode of this new series. What would be the next animated series, and it doesn't got to be Marvel for the record. I know everyone listening right now is like, of course.
Does
it's
that have to
Marvel.
be something comic book related, or just something like
No,
in the Forgotten
absolutely,
Realm?
yeah. We are a fucking comic book podcast.
Oh, okay.
It's
my
gotta
bad.
be. Wait, did you want it to be like based on soap operas?
If we can go into the Spider-Man realm still stick with it, it'd probably be the Spectacular Spider-Man.
Because that one has like Iron Fist, Luke Cage, I think, shows up in that.
No, that is the Ultimate Spider-Man.
Okay, all right.
Spectacular Spider-Man is the one that was like MTV. I think it was like MTV or whatever.
All right, so
It's the one that went like
yeah,
two seasons.
Okay.
It only has 2 seasons.
That one, it goes. All right, that one, the one you're thinking about, that is called Spider-Man: The New Animated Series, and that was part of MTV's like Liquid Television series or something like that. I would that would be pretty cool to watch. That would actually be pretty fire to watch.
And then if we're not going Spider-Man, and I had to pick a one that we would have to do, it would be the Batman.
The Batman,
Not the Batman.
the Jackie Chan series,
Not the Jackie Chan Avengers Batman, but the other Batman.
animated series.
Beware the Batman.
Okay, now those are pretty good ones.
Beware the Batman. I guarantee you'll be like, fuck, why isn't this like still a show? It's definitely one of those like, they put money into the show, but they just couldn't get those 30-year-olds to commit.
So, do you have any closing remarks or thoughts, or even suggestions / recommendations about Spider-Man Unlimited? Would you recommend this to your friends or your fellow peers in the comic book world?
Definitely as a conversation piece. I would give it to them and be like, hey, listen, this was actually a really cool concept. It was really well done. And you can basically, honestly, shells this together as like a what if. Because like I haven't read issue number 5, but this was a nice little like information. This was enough to like, I'm like, fuck, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like the artwork. It still felt Peter Parker. It still dealt with Peter Parker's themes, which I thought was really, really good. Peter Parker is just a guy that's down on his luck and has to deal with everything coming on at him at once. And it just like, it doesn't like change who he is.
Nah, they're pretty faithful to who Spider-Man is. Like they just kind of put him in a different scenario, and he's got like a great supporting cast as well. So it's still the Spider-Man you know and love. It's just put in a different scenario that you haven't seen too much of. I would recommend this to anyone who has invested a lot of time or has fond memories of these like Fox shows and these animated comic book series. And I would challenge them, or I would recommend that they revisit it, because I think it does hold up. It does hold up. Is it derivative of some of the other, like Batman Beyond or some of the other shows? Yeah, you could definitely make a case for that, and you'd probably warrant it. But I think this is still a fun Spider-Man series, because you haven't seen Spider-Man in this particular setting a lot. I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not unique, it's not brand new, but it's still fun. Like it's a fun cartoon, and the comic book was refreshing, like really, really fun, and it made me want to check out more comic books based on animated series.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Let's just talk about the skill of where like the network's like, nah, I can't do that, can't do that, can't do that.
Knowing what I know about the background and the production, and also like knowing that the writers for this show, the storyboard artists, like worked on some of my other favorite, Gargoyles.
I think that's another reason why you got
Batman
to
animated
enjoy it more.
Yeah, it's that like that. All right, this wasn't made by a bunch of like amateurs. Like this is good. And it holds up on its own, and I can enjoy
Somebody
it.
was trying to feed their family.
I wish that the comic book ran longer. I wouldn't mind a reboot. And once you get past that, like the things I was complaining about for this first episode, you're right. This was made for a 9-10-year-old, whatever. This was made for kids. So
for all we know, he's already shown up in Spider-Verse and has been killed.
Well, no, actually, I looked up. I looked up because I was curious. I was like, man, there's no way that
you're out here listening at first. I know you listeners are probably thinking the same thing. Well, there's Spider-Verse, and we can do that. No.
Well,
Spider go.
Well, here's the thing. I was curious to know if he showed up in other mediums, and that's really not the case. Like I said, he doesn't show up in any other comic books. He doesn't have a lot of merch. A lot of people thought he showed up in Into the Spider-Verse, but the comic book series, not the movie. They thought he did.
Yeah, sure, because they touch a lot of Spider-Man.
They do, but they don't touch on him.
Like, they don't touch them.
And I think it's because it's probably got to do with the fact Saban might own it, or I'm sure it's got to do with ownership or licensing. The fact that maybe Saban owns it or something. I think that's why we don't see a lot of him. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed our first pilot episode of this new series, tentatively titled Day Ones. If you've got a suggestion as far as animated series that you want us to touch on the first episode or a key episode, it doesn't got to be the first episode. If it's a key episode, that'd be fun too. We could look for the corresponding comic book. We're open to suggestions, and we'll keep it going from there. And that is the end of our show, Shortbox Nation. I hope you all enjoyed a taste of what's to come for this new podcast series, Pilot's License. Like I mentioned in the intro, the next installments covered the pilot episodes for Batman the Animated Series, The Max, and we've got a whole bunch more planned. I promise. We are about to cover so many cartoons and animated shows. You won't want to miss it. I personally want to recognize and thank the people who made this episode possible. Our sponsor, Gotham City Limit, and our Shortbox patrons. If you're in a position to help us pay some podcast bills, keep this thing going, keep it growing, consider becoming a Shortbox patron. We'll reward you with bonus episodes and access to the rest of the Pilot's License series, commercial-free listening, merch, and a whole lot more. Visit patreon.com/theshortbox to find out more. And with all that being said, Shortbox Nation, stay safe, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We'll be back next week with not only another installment of our Mandalorian reviews, but also a comic spotlight on a Punisher book selected by our patrons. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed and stay tuned. In the meantime, continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. And keep it geeky.